in debt that is coming due within months of Donald Trump no longer being president of the United States. They have to pay those debts. Banks are not willing to lend them more money to pay off those debts, which is kind of what typically happens in the debt cycle that these massive corporations create for themselves, because they don't necessarily need to pay it off, because they have the credit to be able to get the loan, to pay off that loan, then they get a loan to pay off this loan, and blah, 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 and around it goes. Eventually they pay it off, they pay it down, or whatever, but they don't have to do it immediately. But Trump will. Because even before he became president, banks weren't exactly willing to lend him money. That's why he had to go to these overseas banks, Deutsche Bank. But after watching the scrutiny, and this has also been reported in recent weeks, watching the scrutiny that Deutsche Bank has received, they're now willing to extend the deadlines on his loan or lend him more money. Other banks are looking at this saying, well, we don't want to have to turn over all our stuff to investigators, so we're not going to touch it. So he only has one option. This is what I predicted a couple weeks ago, and it's coming true. He has to sell stuff. When you're in the real estate business, your money is tied up in buildings. That's what happens. You sell it, or you rent it, whatever you do, and then you get money, and then you use that money for the other thing. Same thing here, and you get money, and you go do more, and you blah, blah, blah. But your money is always basically tied up, except for what you've taken out as a profit. And what you've taken out as a profit is now in this pocket in your bank account. You're not going to do that. So, Donald Trump organization, multiple buildings are for sale. It's for sale. They have multiple properties that they are co-owners of. Skyscraper in San Francisco. If they do not, they will courts. Evidence and seizures. Nighttime, where they come and say, well, it was $400 million. We're within our legal rights to take $400 million from it. We'll take it that way. Cash, check, or bill, whatever it is, we're getting our money back. That's the agreement that you sign. So they are within their rights. They can't unable to give these debts by the time they come due. We'll start taking these debts away. Again, as predicted, as we've seen this happen in Panama, they also tear down that Trump fitting in to the Trump legacy. These reports are believed. It's a lot more likely. The coronavirus pandemic continues to rage across the United States. In fact, we have just come off of a series of weeks where we have had more than 100,000 new cases per day. In fact, most days over 150,000 new cases per day. The deaths are increasing. Hospitals across the country, cities across the country are seeing hospital capacity reached. Back to where we were at the beginning of this thing, except in a much worse position. In spite of all of this happening right now, Donald Trump has not attended a coronavirus press briefing, or coronavirus meeting in 5 months. Count back 5 months, folks. From November to October, September, August, July, June. Since June, Trump has not attended a coronavirus task force meeting. Things were very very bad in June, okay? That wasn't even at a time when things were starting to get better. That didn't happen until August-ish, maybe into September, and that was only slightly better. But for months before that even happened, Trump just said, screw it, I'm out. This is the big reason he didn't win re-election. Now, don't get me wrong, 71 million Americans looked at the death and destruction that he has caused and said, ooh, give me 4 more years of that. Well, 71 million people can also be idiots, collectively. And temporarily. They're not always all idiots, I'm sure. But either way, 5 months since the man has attended one of these meetings, he stopped caring back in June, folks. And he didn't even start caring about it until April. So he spent a good, 2 months out of the year acting like he gave a damn about the pandemic.
Legendary Knossos.
And then just said,
Once palace to King Minos.
that's it. That's all we got. And yet last weekend, he had enough time to go golfing on both Saturday and Sunday. He had enough time in the 2 weeks before the election to hold 2, 3, something like 4 rallies a day, but didn't have a single friggin' second over 5 months to attend one of these meetings to find out what the hell was going on with this pandemic. And instead, the few times he decides to talk about it during those 5 months, he calls it the China virus. The China virus. This is the goddamn Trump virus at this point, you asshole. You did this to us. Your negligence did this to us. This is on you. This is on you 100%. This isn't about the Democratic states or the Republican states. This isn't about, oh, it's surging in the red states. Ha ha. No. This is about one man, the leader of this country during the pandemic, Donald Trump, being so incompetent and corrupt and stupid that hundreds of thousands of Americans went to a bowling green. That's his legacy. That will forever be his legacy. Once the dust settles off of this election, once people can finally see clearly and the partisanship has died off a little bit, which does tend to happen after the election, the results certified, all that, it will die off a bit, people are going to see clearly what this man did to us. And that is why I have no fear whatsoever about him saying, I may run again in 2024. Go ahead. People are going to start hating you once they remember what competent leadership looks like. Recently, Yale forensic psychologist Dr. Bandy Lee spoke with the DC report at Raw Story, where she pointed out that Donald Trump would likely not hesitate to cause violence here in the United States, or at least inspire violence here in the United States, if it meant he could retain power and still be the president of the United States. Now, this is obviously terrifying, and also in the interview that the DC reporter Raw Story conducted, she repeatedly lamented the fact that the American Psychiatric Association has essentially put a gag order on all mental health professionals because so many of them had been speaking out. And I know, of course, there is the Atwater rule that has been there for a long time, but she did point out that since Trump came along, they've had to put out a new gag order because they don't want these mental health professionals, diagnosing from a distance, even though we desperately need mental health professionals to tell us repeatedly how dangerous this man is. That's a bad move by the American Psychiatric Association, and Dr. Lee made clear that. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to read some quotes from this particular interview, and it shows, and she is absolutely one of the best there is, shows how bad Trump has been, but it also rightfully calls out the eneblers. Some of them might surprise you, so here we go. We are seeing the last bout of just how much he is willing and able to destroy millions of social limits. It is clear he does not intend to leave without placing us in further danger and without obstructing the president-elect's agenda as much as possible. Different forms of violence are unrelated, this was in response to a question about, could he cause violence? Could his supporters cause violence? So here's what she says. Different forms of violence are inevitable, and our culture has maximally cultivated conditions for violence through extreme economic inequality, which divides the population into superior and inferior. Vast segments of the population are deemed inferior. They will be inclined to try to escape the shame by resorting to other identities, such as white supremacy or gender superiority. These are what I call structural violence. Structural violence is the most lethal form of violence, as well as the most potent cause of behavioral violence. So she kind of calling some of us out, and apparently rightfully so. We do shame them. We do cast them as inferior. And that is something Lonewolf did not do. And that's why it's always great to come across stories like these where you yourself learn something. I've been doing this a long time. And I have unfortunately spent a lot of time mocking these individuals. And to be honest, I'm not going to stop mocking these individuals. But I also always try to a degree, say that, look, it's not every one of them. But apparently even that may not be good enough. So Dr. Lee continues. Politicians, networks, and social media are still giving him a platform without realizing how destructive this can be, capable even of disrupting an election through psychological manipulation. Now, those are the other people who are at fault here. The Republican politicians, the social media outlets, which I've repeatedly said have to start banning him and removing him. Don't wait till he loses that world leader status, Twitter. Do it now. You have a majority of Republicans in this country right now, your rank and file, average, everyday Republicans, who actually think Joe Biden stole the election. They wouldn't be able to even think this if the media wasn't covering Trump's lies as if there may be some truth to it. They wouldn't be able to think this if Donald Trump wasn't saying it on Twitter all the time. Oh, but Twitter put the little blue lettering that says, hey, this isn't true. People who already don't believe it, don't believe it. People who do believe it aren't going to be, oh man, it's got the blue thing. I can't believe it now. That's not what happens. You solve the problem by removing the Twitter user. And then she concludes here, he shows that he would not hesitate to cause violence and mayhem to stay in power, in which case there may not even be an inauguration day if we're not vigilant. And that's the key there. We have to be vigilant. There have been numerous stories out just this week, reports, everything, and I've covered them both here and on with Ring of Fire as well, talking about the fact that you have right-wingers inspired by Trump who wanted to kidnap the governor of Michigan and do so much worse. You have right-wingers, Trump supporters, calling in death threats to election officials in 5 swing states that gave Biden the election. You have Trump supporters saying they're willing to get their guns and launch an insurrection against the federal government itself. They're just waiting on Trump to get removed. So what she is talking about here, it's not even hypothetical. It's certainly not rhetorical. She's saying, pay attention to what's happening. Be vigilant, as she says. Pay attention, because this is there. This is out there. This is happening. Luckily, thank God, he hasn't given his word and said, do it, folks. But if he does, we are suddenly looking at a new form of chaos that we have not seen in this country since the Civil War. Except at least the Civil War was over an issue. You know, we wanted to get rid of slaves. We wanted to get rid of that institution. This one is just purely, I don't want my cult leader to not be president, and damn it, I just did it again, didn't I? And that's the kind of thing I have to be more conscious of. I can't just openly mock them like that anymore. But it's not all gloom and doom. Yes, he could inspire violence. Yes, he could call his people to action. They're literally sitting there waiting for him to call that. But Dr. Lee does say She recommends these 3 steps on how we can move forward as a country and help these people. You know, not mock them, not make fun of them, not treat them as they're inferior, but to help them move forward. Here they are. Number 1, you have to remove the offending agent, which is the influential person with severe symptoms. That's Donald Trump. So number 1, first thing we have to do to help these people, get him out. Removal of the offending agent. Yeah, we did that with the election. It's tougher than you'd think. Number 2, dismantling cultic programming and propaganda, which have vastly increased in recent years. That's what I've been saying. Get them off social media. You have to ban those accounts for spreading lies and propaganda and fomenting hate. You also have to do something about cartoons. Thursday evening, Tucker Carlson came out and admitted they can no longer believe the administration's claims about voter fraud. That's huge. Tucker Carlson's a horrible waste of a human. Him doing that is so very helpful. That's a massive step forward. Step 3, fixing the socioeconomic conditions that give rise to poor collective intellect in the first place. And this goes back to 2016, right? That economic anxiety that people said, don't cover up racism. Guess what? Both those things can exist. You can have people who voted for Trump because they're racist, and you can also have people who voted for Trump because he said there's problems in your life, I'm going to make those problems go away, and your life is going to be better. Both of those statements are true, and you do have to fix it. You do have to give people something better so that they're not fooled by the next person that comes along and says, follow me into this windowless van because I've got lots of candy for you. That's what happened with Donald Trump, and we've all seen how that turned out.
French fry, ice chop, cat eye, big pop, pork chop, soda pop, scallop, kebab, soursop, hot pot, dumpling, chicken wing, PK, onion ring. We are America's Kitchen, DoorDash, every flavor welcome.
We have seen lots of different excuses in just the past week as to why Republican lawmakers, seem unwilling to admit that Donald Trump lost the election. A couple days ago, we had GOP Representative Adam Kinzinger who said, listen, we know Biden won, but, we're trying to give Trump some time. He needs to be the one to go and concede that he can address him as president-elect. So, we're just waiting on him. It's okay. Literally the next day, according to NBC News White House correspondent, the people they've been talking to inside the White House say what's really happening is Republicans, they don't want to come out and say that Joe Biden won because if they do that, then it's going to make Trump mad, and then a mad Trump might end up doing something bad to the American people just out of spite. So don't worry. They're doing this to protect you. They're doing it because they care. Republicans are publicly feeding into Donald Trump's delusions because they love you. Isn't that sweet? Isn't that wonderful? It's so nice to know that we have these people in Washington, D.C. who they're looking out for us by feeding into a crazy person's alternative reality, right? I mean, surely that's not gonna come back to bite anybody, right? No. There is one reason and one reason alone why these Republican lawmakers in Washington, D.C. are not publicly saying Joe Biden won, Donald Trump lost, let's move on. It's because they're all cowards. All of them. Every single one of them. You're cowards. You're not doing it because, we want to get Donald Trump some time to accept it and digest it. No. You're not doing it because we want to protect you from Donald Trump doing crazy things. Have you been paying attention since after the election? The dude's been doing crazy things. He wanted to attack Iran. He's been firing people left and right. He's firing people looking for new jobs. He is a dangerous human being doing dangerous things at this very moment, so that argument you're making falls flat on its face. The reason you're not speaking up is because for some reason you're terrified of this geriatric 74-year-old man who weighs 250 pounds and can't even bend over to tie his shoes, but he scares the daylights out of you. And for the life of me, I can't understand why. Well, because he's going to get on Twitter and say some mean things about you? Welcome to Twitter, jackasses. Isn't that pretty much what Twitter is for? Not to mention the fact that I'm pretty sure that Donald Trump can't give it to anybody better than Ken Clemenstein. He is the king of Twitter insults and taking on these people. So, hey, maybe get in good with Ken and let him handle it. Because that guy's never lost a tweet ever. It's really fun to watch, too. But nevertheless, these Republicans are allowing the country to just go down the tubes. They are allowing Donald Trump to break the rules, break everything with the presidency because they're too cowardly to stand up to him, look him in the eye and say, you lost. We lost.
Visit googlestore.com to check out the best deals of the season. Deals on best-selling Nest home devices and more. These special offers start in just a few days. So visit googlestore.com to learn more.
Feel closer than ever to the best music. Say yes to Galaxy Buds Live with all-day comfort fit and amazing spacious sound. When the heart
Welcome back. This is a door that part 2, the dark past exposed. If you're new here and you don't know what I'm talking about. This is the second part of a video that I did November 1st, 2020, where we highlighted terrible things that Adora had done towards survivors. And when I made my video, someone from the golf community reached out to me and showed me even more problematic things that she had done in her past. We need to talk about that as well as a response to the criticisms I covered in my last video. If you have no idea who this is. Adora Batbrat is an OG goth influencer who used to be pretty relevant back in the 2010 to 2012 era. But she's done so much just disrespectful and terrible things during her career that it really just blows my mind how she's able to just do these things and slide by unnoticed. Well, at least unnoticed until now. In my last video, we highlighted her Halloween costume, where I don't know how I missed this in my last video, where she tagged real survivors on Instagram. She then proceeded to wear this costume out in public with parties in it, despite people telling her how uncomfortable it made them feel. And in response to this, she posted a 1-minute and 8-second long video titled, "The T-shirt with the ability to cause panic attacks." The consistency of this video was to blame survivors for not being smart enough to understand her intent, and showing scenes of a gun pointed at the viewer, and at sometimes the head of an individual, while at the end of this video it had the promise that there would be another controversial offensive act. It's clear to me that she stands behind her actions and truly believes everything that she says. We're going to talk more about this a little bit later in the video. Keep in mind that she blocked and ignored several survivors after, and only after she responded to them saying that she was sorry, took down the original post, backpedaled, and then put it back up, saying that she had to put it back up because she believed that she did this out of pure heart. When you do things out of a pure intention and a pure heart, the universe has a way of working with you, and that's not what's happening here. And I do want to bring up something before we move on. You remember her friend Nixie that stayed with her and ended up self-twice under her watch and then checked into a psychiatric ward. Well, it's important to note that only one time Adora went to see her friend of 8 years was to tell her that she was no longer allowed to come back into her house because she's self-harmed. And self-harming was just not allowed. But worse was this photo, which appears to be Adora in a wheelchair, comparing her mood to some sort of disability with the caption, "Sometimes I feel mentally disabled." Not only is this offensive to anyone with a real disability or one that prevents them from walking, but I'm told that this was directed at her friend Nixie. In fact, it was done at the hospital right outside of the room. I'm sure this post was done out of pure heart as well. And since we're talking about majorly offensive posts and shirts, we're going to have to talk about this one. This is a black shirt that says, "I'm a black girl." Obviously, you don't need me to tell you why this is offensive, and she actually corrected a person of color that called her out, saying you were, in fact, not a black girl. More offensive is how she described wearing the shirt.
I read about 2 months ago, and I thought it was the funniest ever. And I laughed all day when I read it. But people kind of like it when it's this one, isn't it like the funniest ever?
Now, I want to break this down as to why she thinks this is funny, and why do you think she thinks this is funny? Well, clearly it's because she thinks racism is funny. She thinks the triggering reactions that she's going to get from people of color when they read her shirt so clearly and obviously disrespecting their entire culture is good fun. But it gets worse. The name of this video is Goth Girls Embrace Their Knives. And all throughout this video, she promotes and glorifies self-harm. She alludes, like, from the start of the video, that this is an instruction video on cupping.
In times of crisis, every job is important, which is why, to us, all of the ones who get it done are essential, and why we'll continue to support you in every way possible, offering supplies and solutions for the industry, free access.
Every goddamn this one is. Shouldn't use it to purchase it. I'm here to give you alternative. Although, other stuff.
And at the end of the video, she makes a joke about self-harm.
Now when I think about it, it kind of made me president. So I'm gonna take my bracelet and go to the bathroom and slip my dog over the wrist.
Just so we're clear, this video starts and ends as if it were an instruction booklet on how to self-harm. If a child were to happen across this video, it drives home a pretty clear point that the object in her hand causes harm. The intentional subconscious underlying point of this video is both insidious and dark. Now, I feel like there's a possibility that Adora is racist or has racist tendencies. In this post here, she promotes all lives matter while calling Black Lives Matter stupid. She goes on to use ignorance as an excuse, which is definitely not uncommon of her, and then goes on to say that the United States is just so vastly different from Sweden. I guess we'll have to be the one to let her know that that excuse won't work in this situation, as Black Lives Matter was an international phenomenon. With just in June and October there being several demonstrations in Sweden. When you pair that with other things that she's said and done, it really paints a very clear picture on where she stands. In another post, she attempts to compare a woman in black to a man dressed up as a vampire for Halloween, saying, "Dress in any costume you like." You also will not be surprised to know that she tries her hand at jokes. Here she pretends to be Hitler with the hashtag #JustTheJokeButthurts, making fun of evil. Also, this was when she visited Germany. And in another instance, Adora actually faked an underage pregnancy, saying that her sister was her daughter.
I'm gonna let you in on my biggest secret, my best kept secret ever. Shh, you can never tell. I think I better sit down for this one. Oh my god. Is she really going to tell us? Will she tell us that she's in fact a man? No, I will not. I'll save that one for later. I'm sorry about that one. I just had to. But, okay, thing is, me and my husband, we got together the 5th of January, 1989, 23 years ago. And my sister Jenny, she's 23 years. I think you know where I'm heading with this one, okay? Yeah, so the truth is, I'm really Jenny's mom.
Over the last 2 months, I've lost about 20 pounds, which blows my mind. After 3 months, I've actually lost a little.
Isn't that cute? Wow, I would have been a lousy mom at 16. But as a sister, thank goodness, I'm the best big sister Jenny I can ever be.
Just generally be frustrated. She's demonstrated that she doesn't have a care for people. She's inexperienced. She doesn't talk to anybody that has these disorders.
I like moms, please listen careful now. Because if you don't respond to them, they are going to be thin, whether you like it or not. And I think their brain
She teaches the art of diet method called the Montia, and she brings it away those suffering with anorexia and just other young girls that might look that way can do so. I don't need to go on a whole talk why this is extremely dangerous, but I do need to raise awareness about this movement who's shown herself to be harmful to people promoting any kind of diet method to young children. Here it can be seen that Adora giving pro-Ana diet advice to a minor suffering with the disorder. She doesn't know how advanced the disorder is for this young girl. She knows nothing of this girl's medical history. She is no diet expert. She's not a licensed clinical therapist. She has no training on this, yet goes on to give potentially harmful advice to a minor. Speaking of this is not somebody that you want speaking to your children. Around April of this year, she threw in a theme party for her daughter's 15th birthday. She said that the reasoning was that her parents would have this type of party. It was some sort of coming of age ceremony that she wanted to do the same for her daughter. Put this to social media and deleted many pictures due to backlash. Now, I'm not against cultural traditions. We're not sure if that's what this is, and I've talked to multiple people from Sweden that have reached out to me saying this is in fact not a normal thing. Well, there's a lot more information that I can put into this video, but I think you pretty much understand where I'm coming from. Adora Batrat reminds me of somebody that I used to know. These types of people live in their own world and they don't care about anything outside of it. They will say that they are great people, that they're the best people that there ever has been, but they encompass themselves in a shell of people who only agree with them and are fascinated with them. They often talk a lot about other people behind their back and seem to be motivated by the feeling of being right, even if they're far from it. They feel like they know enough and rarely venture outside of their own comfort zones to learn more. I wanted to make this video to give you guys a heads up, but also to tell Adora that there are things that she can learn outside of what she already knows, and it might be a good idea for the sake of the people in your life and people that you directly impact to understand that your ideas and how you feel about certain things aren't the only that exist. And it might be good to think about other people for a change, as interesting as this is interesting. That's what you get. I want to make things more interesting responses to talk about. Look, ups and processes.
Trisha literally called the internet to cancel James Charles, and James Charles clapped back like a boss. Both parties threw accusations at each other, aired dirty laundry from the past, liked posts shading the other person, etc. Jeffree Star even made a guest appearance in the drama, but was mostly ignored. It was a pretty messy situation, but as always, we're here to talk about it. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. If you're new on my channel, hi and welcome. My name is Malcolm, and this all started when the D'Amelio family uploaded a video where they were having dinner with their strong and their guest. For anyone who doesn't know the D'Amelios, their daughter Charlie D'Amelio is the most followed person on TikTok with over 99 million followers before this drama started, and their other daughter Dixie D'Amelio also has several million followers on the app, so we can call them TikTok stars. They found themselves in some controversy when they were having dinner with Miss Charles and their personal chef served some food, which they ate while having regular dinner table chatter. But everything went smoke when Dixie D'Amelio
Flames,
had
get
issues
out!
keeping
Out,
some
damn
feels
you!
down her stomach and had to throw up. Dixie remained at the table while acting like she was going to throw up, and her mom had to tell her to excuse herself, which
Away,
she
Charlie
eventually
Christos!
did. The conversation about how far they'd all come in 1 year came up, and Charlie D'Amelio expressed her wish to have 100 million followers on the anniversary of her hitting 1 million on TikTok. And in response, James Charles made a joke saying, "Was the 95 mil not enough for you?"
I wish I had like more time. Cause imagine if I hit 100 mil a year after hitting mil.
Wasn't the 95 not enough for you?
Well, I was just like saying like even number.
Many people on the internet thought Charlie was being entitled, thinking her fans were numbers rather than real people who made the decision to support her and was generally ungrateful for what she had. People also thought that the D'Amelio girls were disrespectful to the chef because Dixie threw up during the dinner. As a result of this situation, the D'Amelio girls started getting a ton of backlash, and Charlie D'Amelio lost over 1 million followers. People were sending Charlie a lot of hate. Others were calling her out for not being grateful for what she had, and among the people calling her out was Trisha Paytas.
Sea in the land, and it brings you good luck and good fortune to eat it.
Liar.
Just do it. You're good. What happens when...
Classic Dixie.
Do we have any dino nuggets?
Ew!
That was not good.
It's a very dramatic scene.
No. Christian almost puked. You have a child. What do you like? And think is gonna happen to you up here? I wish I had like more time. Cause imagine if I hit 100 mil a year after hitting mil.
Wasn't the 95 not enough for you?
Well, I was just like saying like even number.
Well, there are also people being really nice to Charlie, asking her to do herself, etc. As she couldn't decide to part of her life change, she called Trisha Paytas out for today.
I'm just so sick of Trisha Paytas. Like, this is not... Sorry. Just... completely rude. Multiple times.
Visit googlestore.com to check out the best deals of the season. Deals on best-selling small devices and more. These special offers start just a few days. So visit googlestore.com to learn more.
She's mine.
Addie Cooper reviewed the Popeyes chicken sandwich, and it was pure joy. Get the sandwich for just $3.99. And don't forget to order a delicious Cajun turkey.
Saying, she doesn't have a personality, she can't dance, she's basic. Like, you have your own problems, please stop worrying about mine. And that's all I have to say on that. Quite honestly, I just, like, please stop talking about me. You're not a very nice person.